Now that we have a nice layout in place, let's begin making things dynamic. I'm going to start with the core of our application, a tweet. If I switch to the terminal, I'll make a model called tweet, and I do want a factory, a migration, and a controller. All right, so now, of course, in my app directory, I have our tweet model. In the database migrations directory, we have our migration, and then of course we have a tweet factory. All right, let's begin thinking about what a tweet consists of. Of course, a tweet belongs to a user, so we can either do foreign ID and then provide the user ID, or if you have a slightly older version, you can do an unsigned big integer. So if we switch back and take a look at this, you can see it's effectively doing the same thing. Create a new unsigned big integer. All right, next, the tweet has a body. So why don't we do a string here because we are going to limit the number of characters. So we'll set that to body. And for now, I think that'll get us started. So I will migrate my database. And then finally, I'm going to switch over to our tweet factory and quickly set this up. So a tweet has a user ID, and I can do right here a factory and then just provide the model. So if I do it like this alone and I don't call create or make, Laravel will know what to do. It will only create a new user and persist it if it's necessary. And then of course the body of the tweet will be a fake, how about sentence? So now if I boot up Tinker, I have the ability to say, give me a factory for a tweet and save one to the database. Great. So now if I visit Table Plus, sure enough, I have a new tweet that belongs to a user with an ID of 2. Okay, but let's tweak this. Let's make that belong to me. So I will update the user ID to 1. All right, so now I can see we have exactly one user in our system, and that user has created a single tweet. Now we should be able to swap out this timeline here with our tweets. Now we should be able to make the timeline dynamic. Let's go back to PHP Storm. We'll go to our home view. And right here, you can see we hard-coded the tweets. Instead, we're going to iterate over these. So for each, tweets as tweet, then render our partial here. Okay, so now if we click on through, assuming we have a tweet, we can update this to the tweets. And do we want to say, give me the user or the owner of the tweet? Whatever you want. We'll spit out their name there. And then finally, the tweet body. And that should do it. Now, just a little bit longer, I'm going to hard code a generic avatar there, but we can swap that out shortly. So now if I switch back to Firefox and refresh, it's going to fail, right? Because we haven't passed any tweets variable to the view. All right, that's our next step. We'll go to our home controller and let's do this. Let's clean some of this up. There we go. Okay, so we're going to load the home view. Later, we may swap this out with the tweets controller. And we will fetch at the moment, only for the moment, we're going to fetch all tweets. But of course, we know this should really be the timeline for the user. And that'll be their tweets and the tweets of their friends, but not everybody. This is only for a short time here. Now, if I come back and give it a refresh, and we get another error, and that's because we're trying to fetch the user or the name of the user who created the tweet, but we haven't yet set up that relationship. All right, we'll go to tweet. And if a tweet belongs to a user, we have a belongs to relationship. All right, come back, give it a refresh, and there we go. So let's go ahead and create a few more. I will create, how about 4 more tweets, but I'm going to hard code the user ID. So now I should have a total of 5 tweets here by John Doe. Now, notice how the avatar keeps changing. That's because it's random. But a quick little note, if we go back to the Pravatar website and scroll down, we can apply a unique ID. And this will ensure that we get the same fake avatar every single time. So we just provide a unique key here. All right, let's go ahead and apply that. Back in our tweet view, I'm going to set this equal to the user's email address. Tweet user email. So now if I come back and give this a refresh, we'll get one more, but now every time I refresh, it should be the same dude here. Next, if I switch back to our home controller, let's update this a little bit. So why don't we say, well, we could fetch all tweets and we could send that through here. But a few things. First, at the very least, I want the latest ones first. So we could do this. And real quick, if you've forgotten, latest is simply shorthand that adds an order by column that defaults to created at. And you can see there, order by created at in descending order. So we'll see the newest one first. All right, but next, of course, we don't want all the tweets. I really just want the user's timeline. So what if instead I could say something like auth user and give me their timeline? It's kind of what I want, right? All right, let's see if we can tackle that. To our user model, I'm going to add a new method here called timeline. And yeah, if we did nothing else, we could reproduce this. And if I come back to Firefox, you'll see we get effectively the same thing there. But of course, we know this is going to fail as soon as we have tweets by somebody we do not follow. So for example, if I boot up Tynker again and I create 4 more tweets, or let's just do 1 more, that was not created by our user, well, at the moment, it's still going to show up, as you see there. That should not be in our timeline unless we're following Montana Parker. Okay, so we haven't yet set up our follow system. For now, I'm going to say limit our timeline to only ours. That's the only functionality we have at the moment. But pretty soon, maybe in the next episode, when we do add support for following others, we will update the timeline. All right, come back, refresh, and now we only see our current timeline. Okay, so let's come back, clean this up, and that's what we have. One last step for this video. Let's see if we can make the create tweet form work. All right, we'll go back to our home dashboard, and right here, we have it in a partial. Now, right down here, let's make sure we hard code the username. So this would be the authenticated user's email. So if I refresh, now that should be John Doe. And yes, it is. And you know what? We could even extract this to a partial, by the way. If we go back to user, why don't we add a getter here? I will often reach for this. Something like get avatar attribute. So this is a custom accessor. And right now I will return this string plus the user's email. Okay, so now check it out. Here I can update this to give me the authenticated user's avatar. And if I come back to Firefox, I should get the exact same thing. And I do, which means we can now update our tweet partial right down here and do the same thing. The only difference is we're getting the avatar for the current user who created the tweet. Come back, refresh. And yeah, we've just removed a little bit of duplication. And then when we do need to swap it out for an actual avatar, we only need to update a single method in our user model. Okay, but anyways, back to our dashboard here into publish tweet. So this corresponds to that, and we want to make it work. Well, it sounds like if you're going to create a new tweet, it's going to be a post request to, and what would be our resource? Well, tweets, right? Let's add our CSRF protection. We have our text area for the body of the tweet, and then we have a button with a type of submit. Now notice when you're using utility classes, your elements can get very long. So sometimes I will often do something like this in terms of formatting. You can leave it like that, or something like this. Cleans it up just a little bit. Finally, let's just say your avatar. All right, that looks good. And of course, this is required. All right, and that's looking pretty good. So now we can create the tweets endpoint from our routes file. We'll do it right here. If you make a post to /tweets, let's go ahead and create a tweets controller and a store action. Once again, following those conventions. Now we should have a tweet controller, right? It's singular here. This is really a preference thing, but generally I make mine plural, but I think I may be in the minority at this point. It's up to you. It doesn't matter. Okay, so now we need a store action, and this is where we persist the tweet. So we can imagine doing something like this. Tweet, create. Here's our first stab. The user ID is the authenticated user. The body of the tweet will be what's in the request. And then finally, because we are mass assigning here, you can either set your fillable fields or you can turn it off if you feel comfortable with that. Just make sure you know what you're doing. All right. Finally, we should validate the request. So I can say request, validate, and in this case, the body is in fact required. And why don't we set a maximum of 255 characters? Now, if you want, you could save that to the attributes and then fetch them here. Because a little tip, when you perform validation, if it passes, the validated attributes will be saved as an array here. So then we can just fetch it there if you wish. Finally, once you've created the tweet, let's redirect back to your home page or your dashboard. And I think right now we've called that home, but I think we're going to change that later. All right, give it a reformat, and that's what we have. Let's give it a shot. So we can create our first tweet. And there you go. It worked. So we validated the request, we persisted it, and then we redirected back to the home page, where we now render the tweets in descending order. All right, last little thing. Let's check for failed validation. So what I'm going to do is go back to our published tweet, and for now, turn off the required attribute. And because, of course, people can bypass that if you want. So now if I try to create a tweet, it simply reloads the page and doesn't provide much feedback. Okay. So maybe we can do that, I don't know, right down here. And actually, let's do this. If we have an error, we only have the body, right? So if we have an error for that, let's spit it out. It'll be red text, it'll be small, and the error message will be stored automatically in this message variable. Okay, so now if we try it again, there it is. We need a little breathing room. And I'm sorry, I always forget to set a value there. All right, one more time. Good enough for me. I think we're good. If I type too much, we'll do something like this, a bunch of lorem ipsum text, and I run it. Sorry, your tweet can't be greater than 255 characters. All right, so good job. We now have a working but lonely timeline and also the ability to create new tweets. In the next episode, we'll look into adding friends.